Ever purchased the same Christmas gift twice? Or have you completely forgotten someone until almost the last minute? Your holiday gift tracking system might be a little broken, but we're about to fix that. Today I'm showing you exactly how to build my holiday gift planner and tracker step by step in Notion. It's the one I gave you a tour of last week. We'll create a system that tracks every gift, store, and person all in one place, eliminating all of those gift-giving faux pas at once. And the upside is, this is actually way simpler than you might expect. Let's get started. Alrighty, if you were here last week for my video on this, it was a tour of the system. You might remember what we built here with all these views and databases for tracking your holiday gift giving. I will say, I use the term Christmas for the keyword optimization, but it can be used for any holiday gift giving that you like. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to start with a blank page, and I'm going to teach you how to build this step by step. So let's do that. I'm going to keep this up. We're going to flip back and forth between this and the blank view just for reference. So let's open this empty page and we will give it its title. And then we're going to do a couple of the standard things like making it full width. We're going to add an icon. This one will be the little Christmas tree, but it could be just a gift. It could be whatever you want, but we'll use the Christmas tree. And then we'll give it a cover and we'll just search holidays and pick something. Sure, that one works. Why not? Okay, so now what we're going to do, this is built with three main databases. In the past, before Notion rolled out its new data sources feature, you used to have to build each database separately. So we would have three separate databases and then a fourth linked view where you could bring everything together. I know some people still like that. I actually prefer the cleaner look of building everything in a multi-source single database. So let's do that. I'm going to type a slash, and then we're going to choose database inline. The first one that we want to build is the people database. Then we're going to add a new data source, and this one creates an entirely separate database. It's not a view of people, it's something entirely separate. So this one will be stores. And then we're going to do the exact same thing a third time, and this one will be items. So those are our main views, and you can see that the titles are changing as we toggle between them. In the final version, I actually named each view with those titles as well. So let's do that. And then I gave it an icon. So people, stores, I know I used the shopping cart, and then items, I used the gift icon, and we should probably give it a name. Cool. So then we need to add some properties. So if you recall from the previous version, the people database has person, budget, and really those are the only two that don't have anything to do with another database. A lot of this stuff is based on other stuff. So we will rename this to person, and then we'll create a number property here for the budget. Now, if you don't care about setting a budget, you don't have to do this. You could leave it off. And we'll give this a money icon of some kind. Sure, that one works. I don't know. It's not exactly the same as the other one. It's totally fine. And then we want to set this to US dollar. Let's jump to the stores and the items view, create those properties there, and then we'll come back and set up the relations so that they can communicate with each other. That's what some of these other properties are based on. Well, let's actually really quickly, let's just enter someone so that there's an item here. Now, this is one other thing I can see. The icon is empty. So what we'll do to fix that is we'll create a new template. We're going to leave the title empty, but we're just going to add the icon so it populates with a useful icon. And then what we need to do is set that as the default for all views. So now when we create a new person, it will have the icon on it by default, and I can come to this and just apply it. So we'll use another example from my other one, just so we have some people there. Cool. Let's do the same for stores. Let's add its properties. We'll come back here and take a look at that. And really all it is, again, it's the name of the store, and then the other properties are all relational. So that's all we need is the store name. And in this case, I set this icon to the cart. And now that I think about it, oh, it didn't take. That's interesting. I've noticed a couple little bugs with Notion lately. That might be a small bug. I'm going to refresh the page really fast and try setting it again. I've had that happen a couple times where I set the icon and it didn't change. So if it doesn't, it's not a big deal. Set the icon, it didn't. We'll try in one more spot. Let's come to the properties tab and we'll try editing it here instead. Yeah, it's not changing. That's okay. We'll leave it for now. But for right now, all we need is the store name. So we'll enter a couple stores. And again, same thing as before. We need to set up the default. So let's do that. Leave the title blank. And then we'll add an icon and we're going to make it the shopping cart. And I'd used orange. Why? I don't know. And then we need to set that as the default for this one, for all views. and then we can apply it here, and we can say Etsy. If you recall from the last video, if you want to get the icon, let's bring over a browser tab. I'm going to say Amazon icon square or Amazon logo square. Either one would work. We'll go to images and then find a full square one like this. Oop, maybe not. See, it's got this on it. We just need something that's plain, not rounded corner. The rounded corners actually might be fine. So we'll use this one. We'll hit copy image address, Amazon. We'll click on the shopping cart icon. We'll hit upload, paste, and hit save, and then it will update. It's very easy to update those. Same thing you do for Etsy and any other store. Just replace Amazon with whatever store and then logo square. And then next we're going to come in here and build the items. So now let's look at that. This one has some more properties. So here we need the item, then we need a relation to the person, a relation to the store, the link, the cost, and the status. So we've already got the item here. Hopefully I can try this. So let's see if this icon works. Nope. I think there's a bug going on with Notion. Not a big deal. So now we need to set up the relations. We need to tell this that this is linked to people. So we're going to choose add property. We're going to choose relation, and we'll tell it people. And we can do the two-way relation with no limit, and it's going to show up as items in the other spot, which is perfect. We'll give this the people icon that we set. Actually, now I think about it, we don't want people, probably just person. You can link items to multiple people, but I typically find that I don't. So we'll actually do it as a single person on this view. Then we need another relation. This one's going to go back to the stores. That one could be plural and is fine. We'll do the two-way relation there as well and set it up as items on the other page and then change this icon. So now, just from a base standpoint, I would have the ability to come here, add an item like bread slicer, and then link that to me and to a specific store. So great, we've got those relations set up. We'll expand that column a little bit, and I can come back here and see this functioning pretty much like I had it before. We also want to do the same icon-y thing for this as we did for the others. So we're going to choose new template, add icon, and this one is the gift icon, and I made it green. Close out of it and choose set as default. And then for all items, cool. And now all of the items that we enter will work. And we can use the example from the other one, a store-bought is fine rubber stamp. And we'll expand this a smidge and set that to Ina and set that to Etsy. Cool. So this is kind of the basic version of this. So now we have our relations working. And the next thing I would say, let's add our status property because that one is going to be the most important. You honestly could stop at this point and things would be pretty handy. So we have all those statuses, and we're going to edit that and put those in. So in the to-do group, I had not started. I had probably not. Okay, I can type. That's fine. And while we're in it, I guess I can do the orange. I had maybe, and I had definitely. So we can add those in here. We'll drag them down. Maybe I believe was yellow. Definitely I think was purple. Probably not goes there. And then I left the in progress because it's the default. I don't really think that you need it, but it can't hurt if it's there. So we'll create these now. So the statuses were wrap, shipping, pickup. We can put that in order here. And then pickup was pink, shipping was brown because UPS, wrap was red. And then complete, we also had archive. Maybe we'll make that past tense, archived. And then this we'll set as the default, which it is. Great. Okay, so now all of our statuses are set. I had it set where we're grouping by status. In this case, so they're both not started. Let me quickly change one to in progress. You'll see that it's not actually working the way that the live template was working, that it's grouping each individual status. So let's add a third item. Let's say cat fountain. And I'm not getting this. This is an actual thing I want, but I'm not getting it on Amazon, but we'll just use that because it's here. Let's add a third status. You'll see that each status is going into its own group, which we don't really want. That creates kind of a clunky view. Now, maybe you do, and you want to set it that way, but the way I had it configured was if I go to the grouping options, you can change this to do status by group rather than by option. That seems a little funky, but what it means is that it will create a group of all to do, a group of all in progress, and a group of all complete. And then I also set a sort on this ascending so that it would keep the statuses that are similar side by side. So if I had 15 items, all the maybes would be side by side. All the definitelys would be side by side, and so on. So next we need to add is the cost. I already know that it's going to be US dollar, and I need to rename it to cost and give it a money icon. That one's fine. Doesn't really matter. Drag that over, and now I can enter some values so that we know those are working. And maybe we want to turn on the calculation and we want to do a sum. Cool. And maybe in this case, we want to turn on a calculation and we want to do a count so we know how many items are there. We could also quickly add the URL field. No big deal. Which is URL and it's exactly the way it is. And then when people enter a URL here, so if I grab a link and I paste that here, it's clickable. So I can just click it and it will open. Now that's a Notion document. So it opened in Notion, which is pretty handy. But it would open in a browser if it was an actual web link. And I think our items view is basically built. We've got everything here that we need for the items view. Now let's quickly add, oh, actually one more thing now that I think about it. We want to turn on a filter for this to hide the archived items. But before we do that, let's duplicate it and create our unfiltered view. Probably should have done that at first, but it's really easy to quickly remove the grouping. And then we want to change the icon for unfiltered. I always use the infinity icon. And then one other property I'm going to add here is if you scroll down, there's a last edited time. And that one will track from the beginning. Even if you didn't set it up, it will always be there. And then I sort descending. So the most recently edited item shows up at the top. I know that from past experience, I need to come back here and hide that because I don't need it here. And then we want to turn on the filter in this case where we can filter by status and we want it to be is not archived. That's the only thing we don't want to see. So if we toggle an item to archived, it disappears. But then we can come back here and put it back on. Okay, so going back to our reference database, we have a couple things to build. We have these items by person and by store. We'll come back to that in just a sec. Actually, no, we'll just do those really fast because they're very easy to set up. So we can just duplicate this and we're going to rename it to items by person. And in this case, we'll just change the grouping to by person and it will just do that and pop in. Very easy. Everything else is set the way we want it. We can do exactly the same thing. In this case, we'll say items by store and just change the grouping to the store. Super simple. Bring this over. And now we've got all those created. Now all that's really left is to build out some of the fancier features on this page. So that includes the cost roll up here and the formula for calculating the difference. And that actually is set up with, rather than a roll up, it's set up with this formula. We'll actually use Notion's AI to build that. And then hiding in the background is this done property that allows us to track when the items are all in the complete status. So let's do that first. It's very simple. We're going to use a straight roll up. We're going to come to roll up, and this will allow us to, using our existing relation to items, show the status, and we just want to show the original. And that's it. That allows us to pull all these in. And so we'll call this item status. And typically when I do a status, we just use the icon that Notion sets, which is now available. It didn't used to be. And let's change this icon to match. It'll be the little gift icon. And then we want to set up our roll up for the budgeting situation. So let's just add a budget here and then we can turn on the calculation. Those are handy to see. Now, what we could do, we could very simply create another roll up and have that calculate the sum. So it's exactly the same as this. We even could duplicate it, but let's just come here, choose roll up. We're going to choose the existing relation to items again, but in this case, we'll choose the cost. We don't want to show the originals. Instead, we want to do more options and sum them. Okay, that works just fine. That actually leaves us with a small problem, but it's hard to see before we set up the next piece, which is the calculation for how much is remaining. So before we move on, let's rename this to cost, if I could spell it, and then give it the money icon. And then we're going to set up a very simple formula, which I don't even need Notion's AI for, but we know that this is going to be remaining. And we'll give this another money icon, one we haven't used. Sure, that one's fine. And then this is a very simple subtraction. We're going to subtract from the budget the cost, or maybe we say spent or whatever, and we get a value. So now we'll edit this, and then we want to tell it this is also a US dollar property. And then we can do some calculations on these as well. Probably don't need it. Actually, yeah. You just have to be careful that if you assign an item to multiple people, it could mess with these numbers a little bit. Now, the problem here, let's say we're going to add a third item to me. If I come here and enter it under me, it'll automatically fill me out. So there you go. And let's say watercolor paper. We got some watercolor paper coming from me, and then we're also going to buy it from Amazon because where else do we shop? And that one will be $20, say. Fine. Let's say we're going to do that. And then we decided maybe we're not going to get the cat fountain, for instance. And so we toggle that to archived. Now, keep an eye here. The total sum is 230, and I'm over by 130, which also reminds me we can turn on that conditional formatting. Let's do that really fast because it will only take a sec. Conditional color, we're going to do it based on remaining. If remaining is less than 0, turn it red. Cool, so I can see that now. But let's quickly up the budget. Let's say it's 300, just so it's positive. So we've got $230. That matches. Based on the item, we'll go back by person. I've got $230 and the budget remaining is $70. Cool. Let's come in here and we're going to archive $135 worth of product. Now it only shows $95 here, but what happens if I come back over here? Uh-oh, it still shows 30. That's the small problem you're going to run into because this view isn't able to take into account the archived bit. I was really surprised when I went to set up the filtering. I thought if I came here and added a filter and then told it where any status is not archived, but it doesn't actually hide it. I need one where any status contains, but I don't have that option. So it doesn't actually work, and that's just a quirk of Notion. So we need to take that into account. Instead of using a rollup, we need to do a formula to calculate this. And basically what we want is exactly the same thing, except we want it to ignore any that are tagged as archived. So let's add a new formula property. I'm going to rename this to cost old. We're going to drag this over. We'll rename this new one to cost. You can't have the same name on two different properties. Wrong icon. We'll give it that one. And now we're going to use Notion's AI. We're going to say sum the cost of all related items except where the status is set to archived. And let it do its thing. It should get it right off. That's what it's doing. It's saying, okay, look for the status for archived, get rid of them. Actually, for anything that's not equal to archived, and then sum the cost. Oops, I didn't mean to hit that. I do that every time. I hit this button thinking it's the confirm button, and it's not. It's going to redo the AI. I can just click out of this, and now we'll see this matches what we've got right here, 95. That's exactly what we want. So we'll come in here, we'll edit it, and now that it's a number, we can tell it US dollar. And what we want to do is fix our remaining formula to point, instead of at cost old, we just want it to point at cost. And that will fix that. And we can actually just delete the cost old property because it's not necessary anymore. And we can sum this as well. The last thing that I have on the reference, I think we covered everything. Maybe the only thing I'm missing is the cost here. Actually, if we want to add the cost, we can copy that to the stores. I think, let's wrap this so we can see everything. I think if we do, because I've named the properties the same, I believe if we come in here and choose formula and paste in the formula, yep, just pulls it in and does exactly the same thing because I've named the properties exactly the same. So let's fix this so that we fix the icons. And then we're going to rename this to cost, give it our money icon, change the format to US dollar. And again, this is where you're going to want to be careful. I actually turned off the sum in this case because if you tag something with multiple stores, so if I'm considering buying the watercolor paper on Amazon and Etsy, let's just do it real quick. So let's add to the watercolor paper. We're going to add Etsy, and we'll just make this a 0 number just so it's easier to see. So now I have Amazon and Etsy, and you'll see that the values are being aggregated for everything that's shown here. So if I come in here and I put a calculation on this and say sum, 90 plus 60 is 150, but we don't have a total of $150 worth of items. It's 90 plus 40. We have this extra $20 in both spots, and we don't want that. In the case of this summation, we don't want to see that because the item is being double counted because it's showing as in multiple places. There's no sum unique. So I actually just left this off because I don't think it makes sense here. I do think that people might tag items in multiple stores, so I left that off in this case. All right, let's do our little checkboxy so that way we can tell when things are done. So ultimately what we need to do is look at our statuses and return true if it's done. In other words, if every item here is in the, let's come back here, in the statuses, if every item is tagged with a completed status, so either done or archived, I want them all to have that. If every single one has that, return a check. True. If not, just return false. So let's add a new formula for each person. If every related item status is set to either done or archived, return true, else return false. And let it do its thing. And what we're hoping is that they both return false right now. So let's quickly look at the formula, check all the items from the item status, and check to see them. So there's a couple ways to do this. It's probably different. I believe it's different in my original version, but this still works. They did return false, but let's come and flip Ina Garten's store-bought is fine to done. It's the only item for her. So the hope is that the formula worked and she'll have a checkbox there. She sure does. And we'll just call this done. And then we'll put a check mark on it. And this one can actually be dragged way, way, way in. We can actually drag it in. We're going to hide it so we don't have to drag it. But if you wanted to, I held the Alt key on my keyboard and that allows me to drag it in really tight. So if I was going to leave it showing, I could. But what you can do from here is you can turn on grouping and conditional formatting. Conditional color, we can add another and say if done is checked, mark it green. And I want let's come back here, and these actually run in order. And so this one has higher priority. And so the budget for Ina went over, it would actually flip to red. I don't want that. I want the green to take precedence. So we'll flip the order of that. So we want essentially the same thing over here if we want to set up our little store checkbox thing. So what we should do is we can set up the item status. So we'll come back here under stores. We want to see our item status, so we can do exactly the same thing. We'll do a plain rollup, call it item status, give it the status icon, and then this is going to be the items relation. We're going to show the original of status, which is cool. So that's there. And then we want to do the checkbox, but this one is slightly different. I handled it differently. So let's look at our statuses. Now, the goal here is we want to turn a store green if there's nothing left to do at that store. So for instance, we could change both the watercolor paper. I can just do it from here. Let's click watercolor paper and I can modify its status to done. Cool. So now they're both done. There's nothing else to do at Etsy, so I want this to show green. Fine. But there's one little caveat to that. If I need to wrap the gift, it means I already own that gift and I don't have to get it from the store anymore. So I can show it if it's done, archived, or wrapped. So let's build the formula based on that. In fact, I probably don't need to use the AI thing. I'll come back here, copy this entire formula, add a new formula property, give it the name done, give it the check mark icon. And then because again, I've named the properties the same, I can paste it. It should work, but we can just add or current equals wrapped. And you'll see it did exactly what we wanted. There's a check mark on this, and we can set the conditional color based on done, where checked is green. And you can hide this in this view because I don't think it's really necessary. So it works now. It'll show green. And I'm pretty sure that we built everything here. I think that we got it all. You could add grouping here. The only reason I didn't add grouping to this by default in the reference in my last video. So let's add a group. This is something Notion does, and I think it's because it's based on a formula. I don't love it. So I could add a group here. I'm going to change the order so that the undone or the not done are shown first. Let's add a new page. Every time I add a new page in this, it forces it to open in this side pane, and it's just a little quirk that I don't love. So let me show you. Conversely, if we remove the grouping, when I go to enter a new page, it just lets me type. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to open a page and click around. I find that to be pretty annoying, having to do it in that side pane. But if you don't find it annoying, set it up with grouping by default, or just turn it on once you got all your people in. So that's the reason that I didn't actually set it up with the grouping by default. I kind of added it after the fact. Now, I will say, if you're building this yourself and you want to set it up similarly to mine, where you can reuse it every single time, it actually needs to live as a template. So to do that, we can have this existing thing. We'll just create on our root page. So let's say this is our root page that we're going to create this on, which is similar if we step into the reference and step back. That's similar to this page where we can have all of our trackers and track year over year. So we just need another database. And this one will be a completely separate database where we can say trackers, whatever, you can call it whatever. This one can be the default name. I'm just going to copy this to my clipboard because that's what I called it here. And then the only other property I added to it was the year. And I did it as text. You could do it as a number, doesn't matter. Oh, and then I gave this a calendar icon. And then what we need to do is we need to set up a new template. So we'll do a new template here. And what I actually have to do, I'm going to cut this off of this page. I hit Control X on my keyboard. I'm going to come back here, edit this, paste that in. And then what we'll want to do is delete all of our sample data after first fixing the page. So we'll do full width. We'll put the title here. We'll add an icon, and this one will be the little Christmas tree again. You could make it whatever you want. And then we'll change this cover. Again, we can do, let's say gifts, whatever. Cool, that one works. So that'll be our default image that shows up. And then everything else should be fine. We'll just want to remove all of our sample data. The stores maybe can stay. We'll go to unfiltered and we'll back out all the items. Cool, so now we have a template that we can use. You see that I'm editing a template. We'll come back out. So now we're on our main view, and all we need to do is set this this as the default for all views, and then we can create a new page and enter the year, and we're back right at the beginning where we started in the first video. And we did it. Ta-da! We've built our own holiday shopping planner and tracker, and like I said, this one was pretty easy to set up, I think. So hopefully, if you didn't get it from me, you can build it yourself. But if you do want to download this from me, you can go to careerefficiency.com/holiday and you can get this. There's a pay what you want feature there. So if you can afford a couple bucks to help support the channel, I would so much appreciate that. And you can download this template right from there. And now that you've built your holiday shopping planner and tracker from scratch, you're ready to take your database skills to the next level. If you want to get a little bit more refined on how to use relations and rollups, the things that we use to kind of build all the connections between the databases, I've got a video just for that in my Notion for Beginners series. It's a deep dive that shows you how these connections work, and we're building a plant tracker over there. So if you'd like, head over there. That video is on your screen now, and I will see you there.